All right. Only sliding in here a couple minutes late. Let's see. We are warm. Actually, warm. Not just mild, but warm. 60s today. And as usual, using every little bit of daylight that I've got available to me to take care of business out here. Let's see. Let's get you guys caught up on farm stuff, farm news. Um, Lamb number 14. Number 14 was born today. Mama actually found it. She was up here visiting and she called me and she said, I think you've got another baby. This one, it's small, but it's dry and it's with one of the younger ewes. And sure enough, one of the ewes that we have called Dot because she is all white, but she's got a black dot on the back of her left ear. She had a riddle of, let's try that one again. A little ram lamb. Say that 3 times fast and see if you do any better. So, healthy little lamb, kind of snuck up behind him and picked him up, held him, passed him over to Mama so Mama could hold him. That made her day. And my friend Casey was up here and he got to hold a lamb. So, it's good for the soul to cuddle one of those little buddies from time to time. And speaking of lambs, if you have not looked on my TikTok or Facebook, and I think it's on Instagram too, and in the Telegram group, we have a new offering out here. Primrose has been testing it out. Seems to be a real hit. We have massage by lambs. So all you got to do is go in the pasture and lay down, and they will climb all over you. So just whatever part of your body you need massage, point that up. Lambs all over you. Everybody's happy. Prim spent about an hour being a jungle gym yesterday evening. I got several clips of it filmed because it was just hysterical. When I get a little better at running these live streams, I will figure out how to embed video and show you guys in real time. But at one point there were about 5 lambs not just like on her, but like climbing and sliding down her side. And then there was one that was just like pawing at her ribs. And she was just chilling. She was absolutely chilling. So, she had a few days there when all these lambs started coming in real, one right after another, where she was a little off kilter. I was a little bit concerned. I was watching things very closely and making sure that she wasn't going to show any aggression or any issues. And I was prepared to separate her if that was going to be the case. But she settled in, and this lamb massage started yesterday after I moved them into a new paddock. So with the, Pippin, it's good to see you, Pippin. It is pretty much, goat yoga does not have the market cornered is what I'm getting at. So works with lambs. And I just need people to show up and lay down in the field. I'll even give you one of those yoga mats so you don't have to lay down and poop. So they were, since we've been wet, we had about 3 or 4 days of rain, and now we've been very mild, which meant I wanted to move them off the spot that they've been in for a while, because anytime you start to get mild, there's always a chance that the parasites could wake up even in wintertime. So I wanted to get them onto cleaner ground. So I fenced in the hops yard and then, about a 1/4 acre field adjacent to it. So they kind of have like this big B-shaped paddock right now. And there were, there's some fescue in there. So there's a little bit of stuff to munch on. And there are a lot of the forbs are coming up. So the dead nettle's up, the speedwell, chickweed, things like that are all up. And so that kind of gave them something to munch on. Of course, they're still on hay, but and they will be for a while longer. But just clean ground, more room. And when I put them in there, Prim probably spent the first 10 minutes just running around like a fool, just running and braying and carrying on and kind of freaking everybody out. She wasn't trying to kick anybody or anything. She was just celebrating. So I let her run for a while, and then I called her to me and got a hold of her halter and said, hey, I think you need to chill, because like everybody was freaking out. And I now have, I have 40 animals out there now. Do I have my numbers right? So let's see, 19, coming up on it, 35, 36. Yeah. So I needed Prim to not totally lose her shit. Because I've got all these other ewes that are pregnant, so I don't need pregnant ewes being stressed and feeling like they're being chased. If even though she's not really chasing, she's just running because she likes to stretch her legs. So and this paddock was big enough where she could kind of get up to full speed. She was able to reach fifth gear from what I was able to tell. So but yesterday was nice. The rain moved out. We were warm. We were a little bit overcast. Today's been sunny all day. Beautiful clear skies, and all those critters have just been literally sunning themselves. Um, been working on hardwood cuttings. Pretty much everything I have available out here, I've been taking hardwood cuttings, getting them into the grow beds, getting them. I've been sifting wood chips for seed starting and kind of a compost mix, and just filling up all of my 7-gallon and bigger containers. Just filling those up, putting cuttings in there. Just gonna do as many as I possibly can and see what takes. At this point, it just makes sense to prune things and take the cuttings and see what I can turn into a shrub or a tree. Mostly things like the figs, the mulberry, all of the all the berry bushes, the goji, the blueberries, gooseberry, all that stuff. Just lots of cuttings. And while I was at it, while I was making all that potting soil, went ahead and got the greenhouse set up and went ahead and started seeds for like lettuce mixes, basically like butter crunch, and then the mesclun mixes, a few other hardy greens, things like that. Obviously, way too soon to do things like tomatoes and peppers, but we can get our greens going for sure. Take a minute to say hey to everybody else. So Pippin's dropped in. Good to see you, Pippin. Digger is here. Happy to see you. Hippocrates Garden is here. And Beth is hanging out. So thank you guys for stopping in. What other farm news? So I've been fortunate to be linking up with other local designers, like designers specifically in the edible landscaping permaculture space, to the point where there's at least, there's 3-4 of us for certain, like in the Knoxville area. Guys that I know, guys that I've spent time with, guys I'm on the same page with. Yes, they're all guys right now. Ladies, I'm happy to work with all y'all. I don't care. So let's see. On Friday, Daniel from Edible Abundance, which is he's a local guy who Edible Abundance is his company, and he does installation and maintenance of foodscaping infrastructure. So food forest, garden beds, polycultures, all that kind of stuff. Ecologically appropriate plantings, things of that nature. We had known of each other for quite some time, and finally we were like, hey, we should probably hang out and get to know each other, and so we can coordinate stuff if we want to tag team a project, if we have something we need help with, if we have something that we would rather refer out, if we need to go in together to share equipment or whatever the case may be. Like, this is the really cool thing about people who operate in the permaculture space. At least this has been my experience thus far, with practically no exception. Is that everybody in this space has a cooperative mindset. I don't see anybody running around acting like we need to compete with one another to the point where we're trying to like undercut on prices or do anything like that. That's just not how we think, and it's not how we work. And that is like the future I want. So, so Daniel came out. I showed him around. He hung out for a couple of hours. Showed him my systems, how I've been doing things. And the more we got to talking, we realized that we did indeed had met before and knew each other. He was a farm manager for Abbey Fields, which was a urban garden, like a big for-profit urban garden around the same time that I was doing a work share out there. So they did a CSA, community supported agriculture, and I had a work share out there. So I worked, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like 1 or 2 shifts a week, for a few hours, and we got a share of the produce every week. And I did that. I think for one full season and then a partial second season. And then I transferred, I think that was around the time that's what it was. I went back to working on the ambulance full time, and I transferred my work share to another friend in the community at the time. So anyway, so he was affiliated with that. And we were like, okay, that's why your face is familiar. It's just been, it's been several years. And I've met, and he's met a lot of people since then. So we had a great time. And, it was just one of those things that we started to realize how much we had in common, and kind of shared a lot of the same viewpoints on all kinds of topics. And so this week, I believe it's on Wednesday, I'm going to go visit his place. So he has a farm on the other side of the county, and I'm going to go visit him. And then today, Casey Pfeiffer from Sovereign Homestead Design, he and I met in person over a year ago in January. He's been up here one time for one of my foraging classes. And as it happens, we got busy. He was busy with, his family growing and having to move and things like that. And I was busy with everything else. But we started corresponding again right before the holidays, and then finally made time for him to come up here and hang out. And he actually came with tools, and we spent, about 90 minutes, maybe a couple of hours, clearing some brush on a tree line on this adjacent parcel where, eventually when I'm moving the sheep again, we'll be moving the sheep through there. And we basically cleared a bunch of privet and bush honeysuckle and some wild rose and things like that, so that I can get a fence through, and I can fence the sheep where they are able to fully get into the shade, which of course will be important in the summertime. So, and then, I showed him around. We, of course, spent time watching sheep, because that is the best entertainment currently going on up here. And he had some dinner with us, and then he needed to head on home. And so I'm looking forward to returning the favor with him. So this has been very encouraging. This time of year, I can often struggle a little bit with, worries about scarcity or not having enough money, because the work always is a little more thin this time of year and things of that nature. And so the fact that I'm able to meet up with these guys that are operating the same space I'm in, and it kind of just feels like I've just got more people having my back, and then I can in turn, do the same for them. So that's been worth the time, and I'm very glad that we've got this kind of small local network coming together. There's a few more folks I need to reach out to. Of course, I've got my friends Matt Hunley and Ryan Steva over in Middle Tennessee, and we've been friends for a few years. But again, this is one of those things where we're kind of a niche within a niche, and we really need to stay connected to one another and support one another's efforts. So that is the plan going forward, is to perhaps even eventually sit down and have a discussion about what a small guild association could even look like. I'm just trusting my instinct to lead that process and see where I fit into all that. Because it's so funny, because most of us who operate in this realm, we are, we're fiercely independent, and but we're also like very cooperatively minded. So I think those two things could work really well together. And I'll keep you guys posted on where it goes. If nothing else, we know each other, and we're working on building relationships and trust and everything, so that we can support one another. Let's see. Oh yeah, the other cool thing that I'm fixing to work on, may even have time to do it tomorrow afternoon, depending on how long it takes me to finish the job that I've got to do tomorrow. But picked up mushroom spawn. I've actually got my instructions right here. I picked up the inoculated dowel rods for oysters and chicken of the woods from Everything Mushrooms, which they are an excellent local supplier. Everythingmushrooms.com. They ship to you. I did not want to go to downtown Knoxville, so I had them ship them to me, and got them hanging out in the refrigerator right now. So I will be inoculating. I'm not sure how many logs I grabbed, but quite a few. Probably about 20 or 30 logs. Maple that was cut early in January, so it hasn't been down too long. And they're perfect. They're, a few inches diameter, maybe a couple of feet long, and going to get them plugged and sealed and stashed down here kind of in the wood line just behind the cabin. And hopefully after, a year or so, have some mushrooms coming in. And they should flush for several years. So that's one of those things. Put in a little work up front, like a lot of your perennial design elements, and before you know it, you kind of just have food just showing up. That's one of the most rewarding things of how I like to design and garden and grow is just as heavy on the perennials as possible. Go easy on the interfering and management, like low management, and just let the abundance do its thing. Low management in that we're not worrying about a whole bunch of excessive pruning. Basically, like build the soil, mulch it real good, do what it takes to keep the weeds from overtaking things, and let nature fill in the gaps and take care of you from there. Well, I knew, gosh, Tim, I was just talking about my group of designers and installers in the edible landscape realm, and I realized I need to add you to that list. So you may be seeing an email in the next few days. If you didn't catch it earlier, I am on a mission to kind of curate a little group, a very how do I put this? Since we're all basically anarchists, a means of communicating with other edible landscape installers, consultants, educators, and yeah, we'll take it from there. I'll fill you in. But my goodness, I knew I had this feeling that I was forgetting somebody. So it's kind of cool because now there's 3 guys in Middle Tennessee that I know of, and then there's 3 of us out here, not including myself. So there's 3 guys here, and I'm sure there's more. But like I said, I'm basing this on people I have met and spent time with, and even better if we've worked on projects together, at least small ones, so that we kind of have an idea of that we can communicate and we can get along on jobs. Is all it really is, which generally not an issue, most of us. So I think I'll go ahead and hit my main topic here. So I titled the video, "Does Nature Say Oops?" Because I don't think nature says oops. This concept came to me, and it came to me several days ago, and I'm still working it through. So I'm not this is you guys are kind of catching me in real time again, thinking through this process. But we're kind of getting into the time of year, seed catalogs are coming in. People who have never gardened before are starting to get onto the gardening groups and forums and ask questions. And often I'm seeing this from new gardeners, new growers, or even people that are going, full into homesteading or whatever. A lot of them seem to be deeply concerned about making mistakes. And especially as a consultant and a designer, it's hard to tell people that they won't ever make a mistake, because they will. And even more so that it's okay if they do. Now, obviously, we do try to provide leadership and consulting so they don't make the kind of mistake that is incredibly, financially painful. Putting a structure in the wrong place, you know, orienting solar panels the wrong way. But in general, most of the errors that you make in the garden are they're just a learning experience. And so I started playing with this concept of, first of all, why in current society, why are we so afraid? Why are we so afraid of making a mistake, especially when, you know, for 99% of us, if our garden doesn't go well, we're not going to starve to death. But there's a part of our brain that tells us that if I make a mistake here, that I could. Like the source of the fear is legitimate. Like we are, you know, kind of programmed from a evolutionary, you know, perspective that we need to do things to keep ourselves alive. So that's legitimate. Not knocking that at all. But I kind of want to start with digging into why some of us fear failure so much. And I'm coming at this from I want people to understand, I'm coming at this from an understanding position, because this has been a tremendous stumbling block for me for a long time. Now I'm much better at it, but I've had to really dig down into why I can have such a strong reaction to even the thought, not even the actual failure, but the thought that might be happening. So I kind of broke it down into about five kind of concepts here. So in terms of why people fear that failure, a lot of it is cultural conditioning. You know, we're in a society today, it emphasizes achievements and results over a process and over learning. When we're in school and when we're at work, we are rewarded for getting things right, and we're almost never rewarded for experimenting, and that can make failure feel like something you got to avoid at all costs. I'm sure you guys can relate to this. We've all been there, especially in the you know, the any kind of quote unquote, you know, professional space. Very few people are okay with somebody coming in saying, I've got a fresh idea, I would like to give this a shot, and they just get free reign to do it. I don't think that happens in corporate America too much. As entrepreneurs, we certainly can, which is probably one of the reasons why I've gone that route, because I have the ability to take that approach. But even then, it can be scary, because, you know, there is always a part of you know, in the back of my mind that thinks, well, if I mess this up, nobody will ever take me seriously again, and I'll be finished. And we know realistically that's not true, but it's a lot to overcome. So kind of tied right into that conditioning is our attachment to control. So while, you know, if you plant a seed and it doesn't germinate, it's a reminder that we're not in control of everything. And again, those of us who are operating in kind of the anarchist space, and you know, those of us who take, you know, extreme personal responsibility, we can also be control freaks. I'm sure you guys can relate to this. And some people struggle with that unpredictability, because it really challenges the illusion that if we just do everything correctly, that we'll always get the outcome we expect. But we know that's not true. It's not how it works. But that attachment to control is super strong, and it is certainly something that I am and may always be working to, like, ease up on the reins. You know, just loosen that grip. Then again, right alongside that concept, perfectionism and self-worth. Some people tie their self-worth to external successes. And if they fail at something, even if it's something really small, it can feel like a reflection of who they are, rather than just a natural part of experiencing growth. I am not as bad about the perfectionism thing, mostly because I'm not overcome with patience. I don't have the patience to pursue perfectionism. But the self-worth part, for sure, I have definitely struggled with that. And and I have to really kind of be mindful of where my head's at when I'm kind of operating in, if I'm in any kind of fear paradigm. I have to figure out, like, am I tying this to my self-worth? Like, if I have a customer who is not happy with me, that does not reflect that something is terribly, terribly wrong with me. Now, there might be something that has gone wrong that I need to correct, but it's not a reflection of me and my value as an individual. Um, Another one, and this I'm kind of I've got these in a certain order, but I think I'm going to flip them. So we do have loss aversion. Psychologically, we are programmed to fear loss more than we are programmed to appreciate gain. Um, it's also the way we tend to embed memories. So we will remember things more deeply that affected us in a negative way than things that brought us joy. Um, so when things don't go as planned, it can feel disproportionately negative, even if it is in the scheme of things just a minor bump in the road. Some people will break this down into, I think they call it like the 5-year rule. Like, if you are dealing with some kind of happenstance in that moment, if you can ask yourself, is this going to affect me 5 years from now, then it is probably not a big deal. So that's kind of a quick way to intervene in your own head and ask yourself what level of response do I need for this situation. And then finally, this perfectionism, this control, this fear of losing control, fear of failure. I think a lot of it has to do that most of us, or at least in general, your general populace, it's because we have a lack of exposure to natural cycles. Now, I am more in tune with this because I have deliberately chosen to live a certain way, but I wasn't always. I was pretty disconnected for a while. And in nature, it's normal to fail. Not every seed grows, not every bird hatches, not every branch stays on a tree. A weakened branch gets snapped off in a storm. But if you're somebody who does not spend much time observing nature, you might expect life to function like a machine in a predictable and controlled way. And, when people get, for instance, like weirded out by the weather extremes, things of that nature, while weather extremes are tragic and they can cause tremendous, issues for people, as we've seen on all sides of the country recently, you have to remember that, the earth is a ever evolving organism. And it's not a stagnant thing at all. So we have to kind of keep that in mind. Wet my whistle here. Say hello to a couple more people. Pinky's is here. Good to see you, Pinky. I hope the turkeys were more were so you had a supervisor turkey, which Lord knows how I feel about supervisors. Supervisor turkey, probably even worse. I hope that went okay. There would be times when we still had our turkeys that, like, Angel and I could not have a conversation within 30 feet of turkeys because they were constantly interjecting with their whatever they had to say, and it was definitely definitely annoying. And Shawnee Groves, we got a new person here. Shawnee Groves, thank you for stopping in. Hope it's of value to you. Appreciate you hanging out. All right, so we've kind of hit up, like, why we're so afraid of stuff. There's some programming, there's some disconnect, there's all that stuff going on. So here's where we get it to be helpful. If you can reframe what you are concerned about failing at through a natural perspective, this, I think, is going to be helpful. So let's say a tree falls down in the forest. And it's sad that the tree has fallen down, even if it was, let's say, even if it was a healthy tree, but for whatever reason, a storm pushed it down, or the roots just weren't strong, whatever the case may be, or just a bigger tree fell and knocked over a smaller yet healthy tree. It's a bummer. We've lost trees. These things happen. But that tree that is on the ground, it's got a new role now. It's going to explode eventually with fungi. Insects are going to break it down. There's going to be probably millions of things using that tree that will eventually be decaying to start a new round of life. So nothing's wasted. Nature is incapable of wasting anything. Everything is part of a bigger and ongoing cycle. So when you can step back and frame whatever situation you're dealing with in the moment in that manner, you can really kind of pump the brakes on feelings of panic and concern and worry. And I don't mean to indicate it in such a way where we're like, well, nature is so much bigger and more vast than us, and we're tiny and insignificant and unimportant. That's not the road I'm going down. That's not how I feel about it. But we are a part of it. And so I feel like this kind of camaraderie, this kind of kinship with the natural world, because I see myself as a component of it, not like I'm certainly not in charge, although there are times where my impact alters the way things are going, but I'm trying to alter it in a way that assists the greater natural process, right? So one way I do that is, like Casey and I got in today and we cut back a whole bunch of stuff that's super invasive and really outcompetes things that are native and natural to our region. So that I see that as a positive impact, but I did it in a way where with an attitude, I want to work with nature and improve things. I didn't come in with an attitude of, I hate this plant, I want to kill it. And it's interesting that I get it. Like, believe me, I've said this. I'm not by no means perfect here, because there's been times when I've been, whipped in the face by multiflora rose, and I have said bad words, and I'm bleeding, and I'm angry, and I'm usually hot when this happens too. So there are definitely times where I am not like just frittering away in the meadows, skipping around with rainbows and butterflies and unicorns and all that going on. There's times where it's like really messy and really dirty and really rough. But I'm always able to recognize that I am part of a larger cycle, and kind of trying to kind of operate on just I won't say like really like a higher frequency or something like that, but I'm really trying to just be accompanying the process and not trying to take an overly rigid attitude to that work. I hope that makes sense. Like I said, you guys are kind of getting thoughts in real time here with just very sparse notes. This is the stuff. This is what's in my head, guys. This is what it's like to be in my head most of the time. This is among other topics, but lately this one, which is why we're covering it tonight. There's a lot going on in there, guys. There's a whole lot. Let me find my notes here where I was. So let's go back and let's address like perfectionism. So if for one, perfectionism, human construct, we came up with that, and it's ironically quite subjective. But if we look at this from a natural perspective, and we look at, for instance, a tree that's like all like twisted and gnarly and everything, and it's like there are people, so if somebody was evaluating that tree for lumber, well, they'd be like, well, there's no way. I mean, there's no board feet in that. We can't do that. And all that tree knows is that it's been chasing the sun. And maybe it was blocked in one way, so it moved another, and then maybe that tree came down and it had an opening, so it went back that way. The canopy is ever changing, and now it's just a super gnarly, unique tree, which is neither good nor bad. It just is. But it's thriving. Trees, plants in general, adjust and adapt to their environment, which means we can do the same thing. We can be gnarly, and Lord knows I am. Let's go with rivers. Rivers are, they are pretty much, they're trying to follow the path. Water follows the path of least resistance. And pretty much anytime us humans interfere and we try to force them into a straight line, somewhere along the way, it will eventually, with as long as we're not in there interfering with machines and engineering and all that kind of stuff, it will eventually start to wind again. And it will, it may erode one bank, but eventually something will come in again, assuming there's not a bunch of interference. Something will come in and it will, roots will come in, it'll stabilize it. The bank gets rounded, kind of gets tapered down, and it'll, continue on. And the same thing may happen in another area, but often it's because, issues arise in nature, mostly because of something we've done. Now, I guess it's important to draw the distinction between if what things look like when we don't interfere too much versus, we interfere all the time for what we hope are the right reasons. But again, that is subjective. Like, how many stories have you heard of, scientists release some kind of bug to control another problem bug, which causes another problem, and it sounds just like a doctor giving you a prescription for a symptom and then another prescription to address the side effects of the prescription that he gave you for the original problem. And before you know it, you're on half a dozen medications and you still don't feel better, or maybe even feel worse. So it's probably a whole other conversation, a whole other show altogether to get into how much interference on our part is appropriate, and that's going to get into the whole discussion of rewilding, and it's fascinating. I love that topic, but we'll have to save that one for another time. But nature. Let me find I had a really good thought. If nature was dependent on perfection, there would be no evolution. If nature just got it right first time, be like, okay, we're good, we're done, that's it, bye guys. So while for us, like, it can be rewarding to get it right on the first try. I mean, I find this, especially if I'm working on something mechanical, I am expecting fully to be so aggravated and to mess it up, put something on backwards, forget a part, whatever. Like, anytime I'm dealing with anything that involves a small engine, it's going to take me a few attempts to really get it right. So when I get it right on the first time, that's like super, super huge sigh of relief. But that's just not that's just, nature is always, it's always responding, then it adapts, then it grows, and then it evolves. Like, we can pretty well observe this at this point. And I don't really care if you're looking at this from a creationist point of view or evolution. You could argue that God put evolution in play. Fine, that's cool. It really doesn't bother me at all. I just think it's important to observe. This is where I'm always coming back to the observe and interact principle in permaculture. If something is going sideways, I bet if you take yourself back to that first principle, you'll find your solution. Almost without a doubt. Let me find my other note here. So yeah, errors are steps towards growth. That's really the bottom line here. Messing up gets you a better result. And I mean, I could cite examples. one example early on, way back in the day, right after we got our house, at this point, we're looking at almost 20 years ago. I don't know why I had it in my head, but I had it in my head that the garden needed to be at the back side of the yard. Now, it wasn't like we had a big yard. It was a 1/5 acre lot. But I just thought for some reason that the garden needed to be back there. I think it was because at the time we might have been talking about expanding the deck. And so I wasn't going to put anything real close to the house. So I may have had a legitimate reason, but I don't exactly remember for sure. But I built some little raised beds at the back of the yard, completely failing to notice that there were 3 large trees and a part of a building shading all of that. And that was also the wettest part of the yard. So I learned that did not make any sense after just one season. And what did make sense was to build the soil up as much as I could, try to get it on grade with the higher point of the highest point, which was the alleyway back there. So we graded it and built it up. And what did make sense to go back there were the chickens, and that's how we ended up building a big L-shaped run for the chickens. Because shade was good for them. They had cover from the trees, from the hawks and everything. They were under a mulberry tree, so they had mulberry snacks, and I'd strip off mulberry leaves to give to them. So, the fact that I was able to accept the error instead of just quitting and giving up and saying I'm never going to garden, like how crazy is that? Then I kind of shift to, well, what makes sense here? What will be a good use of this space? Another happy accident, again with a mulberry tree in another part of the yard. I had a mulberry tree that was pushing over my chain link fence. And as much as I hated to do it, I decided to cut it way, way, way back. And that was how I discovered coppicing. And I had all this flush of growth come out. And while I set back my actual berry production from that tree, I had all this fodder available that I was able to feed to the chickens and to the quail, and I made compost with it, and it went into the worm bin, and it was, I had use there. So because we know that nature is built on mistakes, evolution is a series of genetic errors. So not actually errors, but genetic adjustments that over time helps a species survive better. And we can see this in today's environment where there are certain species that have become adapted to areas that they technically should not have. Like there are plants and there are animals that thrive in areas that 100 years ago biologists would have said, well, there's no way. But nature, just like Jurassic Park, nature finds a way. So again, they're not failures, but they're steps towards growth. They are always, always steps towards growth. And if you can kind of keep running with this concept and look at things cyclically instead of in a linear fashion, then you're really going to be rocking and rolling. So I continue to get better at this. A lot of room to grow on this still. But really embracing the seasonality of everything. Nature doesn't fight the seasons. Like the trees know when they need to drop their leaves. They know, there's certain oak trees that for whatever reason, I'm actually not real certain of, they hang on to their leaves. So the leaves turn brown. This is especially true with post oaks. They hang on to their leaves, even though they're brown, and it protects that new bud on the tree. And that leaf doesn't actually fall off until that new bud starts to swell and push out from the tip of the limb. Then it drops those leaves. So, nature is really brilliant, really super brilliant and beautifully designed. So, and somebody who didn't know any better would think, well, what's wrong with that tree? Everything else has dropped its leaves. Why hasn't that tree dropped its leaves? Well, it's got a reason. We may not always know why, but it's certainly got a reason. So these cycles of renewal are super important. Um, and then I kind of have like one more sort of kind of go back to coppicing for a minute. Pretty decent little metaphor for life here. And you could ask yourself, do I need to, maybe I don't need to like eliminate things out of my life, or, whether it's individuals, don't like permanently eliminate, but, if you need to reduce your interaction with certain situations, individuals, a job, a family member, somebody who is not bringing good, is not bringing value to your life. I kind of like the concept of coppicing. So you reduce down the size of things. Maybe you do this with a business. Maybe you do this with a project. Maybe you start off way too broad and way too complex. But if you just kind of coppice it down, it'd be very interesting to see what kind of flush of new growth comes out of that. So I'm going to go back to our modern society, very, very fixated on perfection, efficiency, success, linear progress. These are all kind of constructs. These are constructs that humans have come up with our big mammal brain. We have somewhere along the way thought that we had it all figured out, that we are the smartest, the most brilliant that we've ever been. And I'm not real sure where we came up with that level of, I'm losing my word here for a minute, but that kind of holier than thou attitude. I could be the smartest, most brilliant, bonkers high IQ person, and if I forget to take enough warm clothing with me outside in January, I will probably die. So that doesn't have much to do with, our brilliance, our ability to problem solve certainly makes us unique. But I think a bit of humility, which I know that's a thing of mine, humility is a good thing to apply here. So again, if you find yourself scampering around, chasing your tail, freaking out because you've messed up or you think you've messed up, kind of try to remember some of the things I've laid out here, and just ask yourself, like, let's see, what was it? What would nature do? So WWND, what would nature do? That's kind of been my go-to lately. And I tell you what, guys, I've gotten bad advice from individuals before, but I've never gotten bad advice from nature. I feel very strongly that nature is our partner. We are not separate from it. We are part of it. And that that energy, that entity, that is the natural world, actually loves us and wants to see us succeed and thrive and experience abundance. I am not one of these people, while I'm critical of the damage that humanity has done, I am not one of these that thinks nature is trying to kill us. If anything, perhaps nature is neutral. Like, I might be going a little far to say nature wants us to have abundance, but I think it does because it sets so many examples for us to follow. It's like the blueprint is laid out, and all we have to really do is pay attention. So, so really, I'm not going to buy into, hurricanes happen because nature wants to thin the population. Well, maybe, but I don't think it's because nature hates us. I think, like I said, our realm is alive and active. It is not inert. It is not static. So, the concept of taking nature's example, applying it to your own life, highly useful. This is a big thing for me going forward, especially as I have a very nature based business and lifestyle. Pretty much everything revolves around it now, and that's I feel like I have a moral and ethical duty to observe these things and pay attention and share it with you guys as well. So, yeah, wet my whistle again here. I've been talking my head off. Let me catch up on the comments real quick. Tim said, "Well, you do have it, yeah." So I could be the man-sized wild boar tearing up the land. So that's true. I mean, I've been thinking about this with like disturbance, and sometimes we're always, we hear often, especially in permaculture, like that, too much disturbance could be bad. Like is damaging. You're ruining the soil. You're doing this. Like you shouldn't like till until. And I agree. Like you shouldn't continuously disturb land. But the fact of the matter is that nature will disturb land all on its own. And sometimes it is. Yeah, it's like a wild boar running around uprooting stuff. It's trees falling over and being uprooted. And so I am pondering, like, noticing like how quickly things they get healed around here. So, if Tyler's operating the Bobcat and the tracks, it tears up the sod when you turn sometimes. But always, every time nature comes in and heals that, it's always with more abundance than there used to be there. So it might have just been a patch of fescue sod, but everything that comes in, like instead there'll be all these different weeds and forms and things that come in to fill in that void. So another good lesson there, like nature's always trying to fill a void, right? Doesn't like to leave things bare, doesn't like to leave things uncovered. So that's worth contemplating as well. Like what's if I'm experiencing a void, if my soil is not covered, theoretically, how can I mend that? How can I remedy that? Tim, if you love clearing, buddy, I got acres. That could use it. You've seen it, but yeah, it is satisfying. It's satisfying to get stuff out of there that doesn't have a role there. In this case, today, all we did was we just cut stuff at about knee height. So the privet and everything, because I know, like, we interrupted the berry cycle, which was important. And since the sheep are going to go through there anyhow, they're going to hit all those stumps, and they're going to, they'll whatever resprouts from that. Because at least with privet, it's not the case with everything else, but at least with privet and bush honeysuckle, they'll resprout from the stump, but they don't root sucker. Some things like tree of heaven, if you cut it back, it'll put more up, a few feet to even a few dozen feet away. And then you've kind of created more of a problem for yourself. So yeah, it'll be nice to see with the animal impact and then the amount of sunlight that'll be coming in on this particular edge that previously has been very shaded. Should mean more forward production for the critters to enjoy. Pippin says, the first time I did a head gasket repair, I had a religious coworker come pray that I did it right. Yeah, I hear you. Have you seen that video where they show the apprentice? He's just finished his first head gasket, and one of his buddies is under on the other side, on the passenger side, under it, and he's got a wrench and he's tapping. I can't tell if he's tapping the oil pan or what, but he's tapping it right in time with the engine. That's a mean thing to do to some young man who just is undergoing his apprenticeship. But yeah. And they are happy accidents, and that really it's just about reframing things. I mean, this is like 90% of life, right? It's deciding how you're going to react to something, and accept the lesson and learn from it, and hopefully, it's not too painful of a lesson. And I think the more we're willing to engage with these lessons, the less painful they become. That's been my experience, at least. And then Beth makes a wonderful point, and I think this is a good one to kind of wrap up the conversation here, that it's a lot more fun to learn from Mother Nature than to try to control her. That's absolutely true, and we couldn't control her if we tried, and I'm sure there are people that do try, and you might get away with your if you insist on having a monocropped lawn But the instant, the year that you don't apply all those chemicals and do all that stuff, before you know it, here come the weeds. I mean, that's just, nature is always going to work to reestablish balance. And we're blessed to be in a position where we can engage with it in such a way that we can assist that. So I feel very honored that I've been able to make this a large part of my life, and even most of the way that I am able to earn a living. So I kind of feel like it's a vibe, right? You come in with, if you come in with I'm gonna beat the crap out of you attitude. I've learned this when it comes to clearing land. If I am in a bad mood and I get in there and I start trying to cut stuff out, or even if I'm not even in a bad mood, if I'm just like tired or I'm overextended, or if I'm feeling rushed and I go in there and I'm going to, cut some stuff out, before long, I'm being like whipped in the face by limbs. I'm getting caught up in the briars. I'm bleeding everywhere. I'm making up creative new curse words. So this is one of those things that I don't do that work. I don't do any work with nature if I'm coming in with a foul attitude. So if that just means I just have to stop what I'm doing that day and do something else, maybe it's just something like, maybe I'm just going to do some mulching instead, or maybe I'm just going to, even just take a walk and take some notes, because, don't pick a fight, right? Don't pick a fight with her. So that's what I got for you guys tonight. Really appreciate everybody hanging out. If you haven't, check in on the events page, the events and classes page on the website, strongrootsresources.com. We'll be having classes coming up here before too long. More being added. I'll get some more descriptions up there. And right now, my first focus is to finish getting ready for the Pick Tennessee Conference. I'll be teaching or having two. I've got two speaking segments, one on frugal homesteading and one on these lessons, early lessons learned with the sheep, grazing sheep and healing your land. So I've got all my notes down on those, and it's time to kind of curate them into a little bit of an outline and practice my speaking so that I bring value to those folks. So that'll be over in Franklin, Tennessee. Tim, I don't know. I might be able to swing by and say hey to you. I'm going to try to remember to check in with the folks on that end. I'm going to be there the 13th and the 14th, but I'll holler at you. I'll do the very best to remember to holler at you. It's, I think it's at the Marriott in Franklin. So thank you guys for hanging. I appreciate it. Holler at me anytime if I can help you with anything, and we will talk to you next time.